rights of British expats who live in Europe and EU citizens who live here may not be as assured as first thought once the UK leaves the European Union, according to Home Secretary and Conservative leadership hopeful Theresa May. While being interviewed by ITV's Robert Peston yesterday, Ms May suggested they were not guaranteed.
What I'd say is at the moment we are still a member of the EU and the arrangements still continue, so there is no change to their position currently. But of course, as part of the negotiation, we will need to look at this question of people who are here in the UK from the EU, and I want to ensure that we're able to not just guarantee the position for those people, but guarantee the position for British citizens who are over in other member states, in other countries in Europe and living there.
Former Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said Ms May's words will only have increased the anxiety felt by EU citizens currently living in the UK and British citizens living in the EU, and that suggesting that their status is subject to the results of the negotiations adds to the current uncertainty, which is being exploited by extremists running awful go-home campaigns. Meanwhile, fellow Conservative leadership contender Andrea Leadsom says we must guarantee the right of EU citizens to remain in the UK after Brexit. Perhaps you're a Brit who lives in mainland Europe or a European citizen who moved here. Are you concerned that you may have to move back to your country of origin? You can call us on 0500 288 291 or email vine@bbc.co.uk. Let me start with my guest Michael Mercer, who lives south of Alicante in La Marina. Hello, Michael. Good afternoon.
Hi, Vanessa. Good afternoon to you.
Can you tell us why you moved out to Spain?
It had always been an ambition, really. Ever since the first time I came here, I thought, well, this is the kind of life that I would like. Okay, it was in the days of the Paseta and a long time ago, but it only got better, really.
And you've lived in Spain now for 3 years.
Just about.
Yes, and now you're obviously listening to the comments made by Theresa May. How do you feel about the prospect that just maybe you might lose the right to carry on living there in Spain?
Well, that is obviously a concern for me and a great many other expats. We just don't know what's going to happen to us, and we feel that the UK might abandon us. We've invested all our savings in the in Spain, and couldn't afford to go back to the UK even if we wanted. Our property will be worthless. The UK nor Spain will benefit from abandoning us. So, what's the point? You know, we voted to stay in. And I think, to be perfectly honest, we voted to stay in because we really didn't know the benefits of coming out. We couldn't see, certainly not as far as we were concerned, there weren't any benefits.
Michael, in the event of the absolute worst case scenario, and I think people are agreed it's most unlikely that this would happen, but let's imagine that it did, and you were told that, let's say in 3 years' time, really you're going to have to sling your hook and go back to the UK, what would happen to you under those circumstances?
Well, what would happen to us would be that, well, we don't think that would happen for a starter. We think possibly Spain would give us the option to become Spanish citizens if we're already here. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that if it did happen, well, the UK would be totally, but we would just be reliant on the social services. We would have no choice.
If Spain did give you the option of being a nationalised Spanish citizen, would you take it?
Absolutely. I see no reason not to. I live here. I will shortly have a Spanish driving licence. What difference does having a Spanish passport make?
All right, Michael, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to my guest. She's here with me in the studio. It's Nina Trentman. Hello, Nina.
Hiya. Nice. Thanks for having me.
It's a great pleasure to have you here. Where do you come from originally?
Originally from Germany, from the north, a state called Lower Saxony, which is close to Hamburg.
And how long have you been living here?
I came for a year in 2011 to study here in London, and then went to work in China and came back in 2013, so close to 3 years.
So how would you describe your emotions after hearing what Theresa May had to say at the weekend?
Well, I thought it was a blow, just because I was assuming and I was believing what people said before during the campaign, that yes, as long as the negotiations go, nothing will change, and even afterwards, European citizens that have already been in the UK will be allowed to stay, and of course now that's changing a bit, and I don't really know how much of it is just because she wants to have something that she can negotiate and play with, or whether it's actually something that we could see that people are saying, okay, you are European, you've been here for so and so many years, but still you'll have to leave. I hope that it's just going to be after 2 years, because then I've been in the UK for 5 years, and if I wanted to, I could apply for a passport, whereas of course I don't really know whether I would want to, if the UK is taking that turn.
Do you consider the UK your home?
I'd say yes, very much so. It's actually, well, I've been living in many places around the world, and so, of course, definition of home is maybe a bit different for me than for others, but it's the country that I very much like and that I would love to see as the place that I'm continuing to live in. So, of course, this is quite worrying, not only from a practical, but also from an emotional level.
And if it were decreed that you would have to take on British nationality to stay here, you just said that if that were the case, you're not sure you'd want to stay. Under those circumstances, you wouldn't really fancy it.
Well, the problem is that Germany doesn't really allow, for most cases, doesn't really allow for you to have double citizenship. And so the German passport allows me a lot of travel internationally, whereas if I had the UK passport out of the EU, then I'm not really sure whether I would actually be able to travel to that many places.
Well, just to tell you, there was life before the common market, as it used to be called, and we certainly were allowed to travel almost everywhere except occasionally behind the Iron Curtain. But I mean, it didn't stop us going on holiday to Belgium if we wanted to, or popping over to France. I mean, it's most unlikely that would be the case. If you had a mere British passport, you'd still be fine as a world traveller.
Yeah, but I think it also then, of course, depends on like what kind of solutions they come up with work permits or visas, for example. Just because I could, of course, also imagine that my company that has sent me to work here in the UK, that they would be saying, okay, let's sponsor a visa for her. That's the easiest thing. I guess, of course, that could also be an easy way out for many Europeans who just want to work here and who want to stay.
All right, well, thank you very much. Let's talk now to Raoul Ruparel, co-director of Open Europe, which is an EU policy think tank. He's in our Westminster studio. Hi, Raoul. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What was your understanding until this weekend of what would happen to Britons living elsewhere in Europe and also Europeans living here in the UK? What did you think was going to be the case?
Well, I think similar to your guests, most people had assumed that everything would largely stay the same, that the rights of the EU citizens here and of UK citizens in Europe would be maintained, and there would be no real retroactive action on people who had already moved. And I largely still think that is the case, even though we've had these comments from Theresa May over the weekend.
What is the point of the comments then? Are they meant to unsettle people?
Well, I think if you look at what Theresa May said and then followed up with what Philip Hammond said earlier today, I mean, I think the point seems to be they're suggesting that they can't draw a red line and say we guarantee all the rights of EU citizens in the UK until they have a similar reciprocal arrangement from the EU. And they're essentially saying if you go into the negotiations having drawn this red line, then there's no guarantees the other side will offer you the same off the bat. Now, I think that's quite an unlikely proposition. I do think if they did guarantee the rights of EU citizens here, that the other side would be as forthcoming and offer the same guarantees for UK citizens. But I think what this shows is that probably leaders on both sides, EU and the UK, just need to get together and say, right, this is a joint statement. Everyone who's already moved has the same rights. And I think it needs action on both sides now, because hearing the stories of your guests and from other people, it really is throwing doubt that is unnecessary, I think.
There certainly is a situation whereby people are feeling less secure rather than more secure, and more worried rather than less worried, and also might start doing the sorts of things that we really don't want them to do for the economy, like putting off buying houses, putting off travelling, putting off holidaying, putting off all sorts of things.
Well, exactly. I think this level of uncertainty is unnecessary. I mean, I think there are some other reasons that have been mentioned behind Theresa May's comments. Maybe she is considering that if we offer a blanket guarantee now, there could be an influx of people coming from the EU to take advantage of that. But that is easily countered by setting a date or a cut-off when that starts. So there are ways around it. And I think there's time that we start coming up with a clear policy on this, rather than just working on speculations and what people are saying, ahead of the negotiations and during leadership contests.
But would you say that the platform for this discussion doesn't come from we want to get rid of the EU nationals living here, so let's get on it? It's the opposite of that. It's we don't want to. We do want to guarantee that if you're already here, you can stay here, and we just want to make sure that other countries are going to say the same thing. So we're not being threatening. That's not what Philip Hammond or Theresa May were intending when they said it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I didn't read it as a threat, to be honest. I thought it was more trying to stake out a negotiating position and be a bit cautious. So I think maybe seeing it as a threat was misinterpreted, but equally, they weren't crystal clear. I think also if you look at, a recent poll released over the weekend from the British Future think tank, basically saying 84% of people agree that, people who have already moved should have their rights maintained. I mean, there's a clear groundswell of public support for this as well. So I don't think there is much reason to continue putting it off, to be honest.
Thank you very much indeed. So my thanks to Michael Mercer, Nina Trenterman and Raoul Ruparel, and of course we want to hear from you via the usual methods.